When Dan Benedict died in December 6th, it was kind of a watershed moment for me personally and also for the industry. Dan had been assistant director first from 1990 and then executive director right after George Siebert had retired from that office. There's only been 4 executive directors of first PFCD and SPFA, and even though we think we've been in this industry a long time and done a lot of things for it, I just realized just a moment ago that Kurt has had the title of executive director longer than any of the others. So actually I want to applaud Kurt and for a job well done so far. First off, I want to talk about Dan Benedict because I think there's probably a lot of people in this room that don't know who Dan Benedict was and what he did for the industry. So I'm talking about his legacy. Webster's dictionary describes legacy as something transmitted by or received from a predecessor or from the past. When Dan Benedict began working for the Polyurethane Foam Contractors Division of the Society of Plastics Industry in 1990, there were probably fewer than 1,000 spray foam contractors in the United States. All but a handful of those were roofers. Spray foam was not considered to be a viable insulation or roofing system in the general construction industry. Trade journals didn't run stories on spray foam. Building codes in many cases didn't even allow some of our most successful applications, such as unvented attic assemblies. Spray foam roofing was not considered to be a viable product. No ASTM standards had been developed. And most of the performance research on spray foam was consistent of how badly it would burn in a fire. Today, my personal estimates, and you may disagree with this, I think we got close to 10,000 spray foam contractors around the country. Spray foam is now a mainstream insulation. It's recognized by the building science community as one of the best products to control the interactions of heat, air, and moisture within the building envelope. The latest building codes are now written to favor spray foam applications, particularly with air infiltration. And research by non-spray foam advocates confirmed that spray foam roofing is one of the most sustainable roofing systems to date. NRCA and ASTM have fully developed standards and guidelines, mostly developed with our help. The growth and acceptance of spray foam in construction can be tied directly and indirectly to efforts by George Siebert, Dan Benedict, and his staff at PFCD and SPFA, and the members that volunteered to do the work. From the time he began working with PFCD in 1990 to his first retirement in 2003, and I say his first retirement because I brought him back when I was director to do special projects for us, and then when I left as executive director and Kurt took over, he brought him back as well to help him in the transition. So Dan kept working even after his retirement for the industry. He coordinated research that protected, defended, and advanced our industry. He helped identify what type of performance testing was needed, who could perform that testing that was credible, and most importantly, how to fund the damn thing. Projects such as the NHB racking study, Factory Mutual Roofing Class 1 approvals, Underwriters Laboratory Wind Uplift Research, National Roofing Foundation Spray Foam Roof Study, Oak Ridge National Laboratories R-Value Research, and many more. That helped provide the data that convinced the national trade groups, building code officials, government regulators of the value of spray foam applications. We also supported the efforts of the National Research Council of Canada on air infiltration, the effects of energy performance and better indoor air quality using spray foam. Funding projects was not easy. At that time, we were a small trade group. Most of our suppliers were what I call mid-majors. They weren't the big chemical companies providing the big bucks. But he was able to leverage our assets, our staff and our members, to the larger trade association, Society of Plastics Industry and then American Plastics Council, to fund a lot of our much-needed research projects. We'd kick in $25,000 or $30,000, and they kick in $200,000. And that was a lot of the benefit that we got that Dan was helped to do for us. What we found was that the other plastics groups within the SPI and APC, they had smart, capable staff, but very little knowledge about construction industry, and that's where we came in. Our members were mainly small business concerns, And that actually resonated with regulators and legislators, particularly during the Clinton and Bush administrations. We'd assist other industry groups with regulatory and political assistance on their issues, which were either complementary or non-competitive to ours. And then in return, we get assistance on our issues, and a lot of it monetary. He was a master at developing and maintaining great relations with other industry groups, and such as, the NRCA, RCI, CSI, and then with the government regulators like EPA, DOT, FTC, DOE, OSHA, NIST, and others. He staffed our technical committee for quite a few years, and that kept our group focused on developing the necessary guidelines and standards that we still use today. At that time, he wrote most of the articles that were in our polyurethane foam contractors newsletter as well. After taking over as executive director from George Sievert, he was able to keep our members focused on overall industry issues rather than on specific company agendas. He was very effective in identifying early inter-industry squabbles that could affect our effectiveness. A good example is the gravel foam issues in the 90s. There was a bunch of proponents for it and proponents against it. So what he was able to do, he was able to get both advocates and opponents to agree to a nationwide survey of gravel foam roofs by independent non-spray foam roof consultants and inspectors. And the results of that survey led to inclusion of aggregate covered spray foam roofs in our technical documents. Several times a year, he spearheaded spray foam industry responses in different states like California, Arizona, Michigan, New York, New Hampshire, Florida, Massachusetts, and others that would propose legislative or regulatory initiatives that could negatively affect the spray foam industry. In those cases, he'd liaison with the state and the federal government affairs departments of APC and SPI to get their staff to get meetings with regulatory groups and our technical staff and our members to address, a lot of times, bogus issues or issues that could negatively affect us. Many times, PFCD members and SPFA members such as Buddy Cockrell, Ed London, Bob Henderson, the Stumblers, Melvin and Irv, would travel to talk with either regulatory or legislative personnel on issues that could hurt the industry. Good example was one, I think, in 2002, if I'm not mistaken. That was when we were doing the transitioning in our blowing agents from 141B to the 245FA on the closed cell foams. They had a transition period that we were supposed to have a drop dead by a certain date, and it appeared like we were not going to be ready. Well, Dan was able to get the meeting together with the right people and to bring in the right people too. I think Buddy Cockrell was there, Ed London, Bob Henderson, and I think he picked these people with particular care. I went to the meeting and we talked about how long it took to transition from a material. 1 to 2 years to develop a system, 1 to 2 years for testing, and then you actually had to get out in the field to do that. Well, those arguments were being semi-successful, and sometime during the meeting, I remember Buddy Cockrell came up and says, wait a minute, you guys don't get it. If you follow through with this, our business is shut down. I'm out of business. And at the time, we came, whoa, it seemed kind of strange to have someone be that forceful and that passionate, that demonstrative. And at the time, I was thinking, God, that wasn't the way to do it. But then when I got back in my office, I got these string of phone calls from EPA people. I still remember Anhar Karimji. He's just saying, wow, I didn't know that was that important an issue for you. How can we help? Well, what do you mean? Well, we have some grant money. Would that help you transition? I said, sure. I'm always looking for money. How much do you need? I said, $1 million. Well, they didn't give me $1 million, but they did give me $375,000 from a grant. And a lot of that had to do with Dan setting the meeting up and getting the right people there with the right focus and the right type of passion. And that's who Dan was. Because of his preparation, his success rate was extremely high in these meetings. Recognition of his work and the tremendous effect it had on the advancement of the spray foam industry is long overdue. And I'd like to take the opportunity to say thanks, Dan. For a job well done.